Tuesday, Wednesday each night. It'll be 6:30 each night. If you'd like to come for the meal beforehand, you can do that. Just bring a donation to help out with the meal. I usually, in my mind, think $2 or $3 per person. That helps to cover the cost, actually, which is really good. When I talked to Rose about the meal for the banquet we just had, she did the food for everybody for like $3.50 a person. So yeah, she's a superhero. It's fantastic, restaurant quality. And anyway, so that's next week. So 5 o'clock until 6 o'clock, the meal will be served. If you'd like to bring a dessert, either of the nights, you could do that, or any of the nights. That'd be a blessing to the sweet tooth folks. But we should have it should be a good week. Next week, there's no youth group or Awana. So Awana will pick it back up in 2 weeks from tonight. So just a note about that. And then 10 days from today, we're going to have a men's prayer breakfast as well. So just keep that in mind for our guys. All right. By the way, Casey and I were able to go see the Allens today in the hospital. They were planning on getting out. I haven't heard from John. I assume they've gotten out by now. They had their little girl. She'll go by the nickname of Scotty. Her name is Scotland Marie. She was like 9 pounds, 7 ounces, 21 inches. She was a big baby, a week overdue. They took her by cesarean on Monday, and mom and baby are doing very well. We had some good fellowship with them this morning, and just keep them in prayer as they get back home and transition into twice as many kids now. My dad used to say that having the second one's the hardest because you double. But when you have the third one, it's actually not that bad. That's what he said. He had 7, of course. So anyway, so that just keep them in prayer, and we'll start a meal train for them coming up next week. Her folks are in town, and so Charlotte will put that together, and then we'll get that word out to you in the email so you can sign up to help out with some meals. All right, we're going to finish up the book of Exodus here tonight. It might sound impossible, especially when you consider we're going to start at the end of Exodus 35. So if you go to the book of Exodus, and then, Lord willing, we'll be starting in a new study in the New Testament. And so we'll pick that up in a couple weeks. I'll hold you in suspense there about that. Exodus 35, we're going to look at the latter part. We're going to look at parts of 35, 36, 39, and 40 here tonight. So we'll keep you moving. We're not going to get into the details of the tabernacle and its building and where different things were and so forth. We're going to look at the other aspects that we can make application to our own lives with. And so we're going to do that here tonight. So Exodus 35, we'll pick up our reading in verse 30. We looked at some of this last week, but we had to kind of hurry through this section. It says, and Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and he hath filled him with the Spirit of God and wisdom and an understanding and knowledge and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious works, to work in gold and in silver and in brass, and in the cutting of stones, set them, and in carving of wood, so to make any manner of cunning work. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach, both he and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. Them hath he filled with wisdom of heart, to work all manner of work, of the engraver, and of the cunning workman, and of the embroiderer in blue and in purple and scarlet and fine linen, and of the weaver, even of them that do any work, of those that devise cunning work. Chapter 36, verse 1. Then wrought Bezaleel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man, in whom the Lord put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary, according to all that the Lord had commanded. And Moses called Bezaleel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, even every one of whose heart stirred him up to come unto the work to do it. And they received of Moses all the offering which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the sanctuary, to make it withal. And they brought yet unto him free offerings every morning. And all the wise men that wrought all the work of the sanctuary came every man from his work which they had made. And they spake unto Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough to the service of the work which the Lord commanded to make. And Moses gave commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for the stuff they had was sufficient for all the work to make it, and too much. Tonight I want to look at our study. The study will be bountiful giving and blessing. Bountiful giving and blessing. And we look here really at going to work. We have just come off of, and I kind of gave the background, they, in recent days from this, they had worshiped the golden calf or the golden bull. They had crafted that or had Aaron do so, and then they worshiped that. They put the altar of the Lord before that, in front of that, but they worshiped this god of Baal. We're told that in different places in the scripture. We're then told that Moses came down from Mount Sinai from receiving the 10 words or the 10 commandments, and he was so upset he broke the commandments on the ground, and he intervened for the people. The Lord wanted to consume them, and he kept the Lord from doing that. And the Lord said in the next chapter, chapter 33, that he was going to withhold his presence from them. He'd send an angel with them. They didn't like that. And so they pleaded with the Lord, and the Lord then renewed the covenant. Then they were really commissioned with the task of building the tabernacle. They had already received all the instructions for that, but now was the time to do it. And so they were going to work. And so this gives you kind of the context. They had gone from worshiping the golden bull to just a short time later, Moses went back up into the mount for 40 days and 40 nights. He had received the commandments from the Lord and came down off of the mount. And here they are, and they're preparing to construct the tabernacle for the presence of the Lord. So they did that. And so we have here in chapter 35, verse 30, so as we look there, the first question tonight is, what key elements were part of Bezalel's person and his character? As you look at verse 30, it says, and Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezalel the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and he hath filled him with the Spirit of God, and wisdom, and understanding, and in knowledge, and all manner of workmanship, and to devise curious works, to work in gold and silver and in brass, and the cutting of stones, to set them in carving of wood, to make any manner of cunning work. And it says in verse 34, he hath put in his heart that he may teach, both he and Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. So what key elements were part of his person and even his character as you look there in verses 30 and following? What do you notice there about him? Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He was. Yeah, he was a handy guy. What else do you notice about him? Yes. Okay, good. Yeah, seems like the Lord gave him special insight and help. We would say that he had the Spirit of the Lord upon him, right? So if you have the Spirit of the Lord, you have supernatural power, which is pretty cool, and an ability that only God can provide for you, which is pretty important when you think of it that way. Yeah, what else? Yeah. Yeah, there's a gift, right? Yeah. That's huge. That's right, because if you look at it, you get into the next chapter, it says that all the different people. And so how did they get to that point? Well, most likely this man was able to teach, to train them. So you can imagine if you're making something and you have to make something very big, like the bronze laver or something to that effect, you are going to need more than just one guy to do it. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to teach them. First of all, you're going to have to find out who's handy. So when we build like the singing Christmas tree here, they don't come to me and say, "Hey, will you build this singing Christmas tree?" Because I can't even fathom it. I can't even figure out how to make something, and if I could, it wouldn't be safe to climb up into. And so we have somebody like Mike Ballum here, who builds it OSHA approved. And I mean, it's about as safe as you can get, and he even moves the thing. And he checked underneath to make sure that the stage could hold all the weight. And, so you get somebody like him who has an understanding of the way engineering works, of the way, that you would put something together, and he is going to be good at that. And you want people like that to do this. And I was just thinking about this as I was studying. You have people like the pastor is pretty important in a church. You want him to be able to teach and to preach. I mean, he's supposed to be able to teach. He's supposed to be able to preach. Then you have other individuals who are very important to the church. I'm telling you, the teaching part of the church is so important. When you look at like the children's ministry product, I personally am a product of sitting through Sunday school for years, all of my life. I started in the nursery in a church in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I went to that church from the time I was a baby in the nursery. And then I got taught by all the ladies in our church that would teach us. And, I was benefited greatly from that. So you have teachers that are very important in a church. But you also have people who are handy in the church. The church I grew up in, my grandpa and uncle helped to do all the concrete work there. And so when they were going to build this building, they were part of the whole process of building and in selecting the individuals who would help construct the building. Why? Because they knew people because of the construction that they did. They were so important to the church. Every single person is important in a church. Whether your gifts and abilities are scholarly, and I'd put into that category if you're teaching or preaching, you're studying in order to be able to communicate that with somebody else, or if they're hands-on. People like Kevin back at the sound booth, how important he is for us, like our worship on Sunday, and preparing the slides and having them up to present to you so that, he'll be back there and somebody will give him the music and he'll type up the words for the different songs that we sing. And we just kind of, I just kind of take that for granted, but there's a lot of work that goes into that, and the ability to be able to make that presentable and glorifying to the Lord, and then being able to run the video. Many of you have been able to watch a service and say, "Wow, it's so cool." My dad always talks about it. He says, "Man, your sound guys are like the best." He said, "I'm watching, and all of a sudden it changes over to the Bible reading, and then it changes over to the song or the slide, and then it's really cool." And that's important. All these different pieces are vital. But I think Amber brings up a very good point. What we should be doing, and it's even a New Testament teaching, is we should be teaching the next generation. We should be taking this, and we should be looking at other people in our midst and saying, "You know what? They're handy. That person's handy. I need to take them under my wing, and I need to bring them along." Or that person seems to have an inclination toward teaching. They're just very natural. And I'm going to bring them along. I'm going to teach them, and I'm going to show them. I'm going to give them opportunities to go there. I had a youth pastor that was that way. I was called to the ministry when I was 16. That was on a Friday night. On Sunday, he said, "Okay, we have a teen a teen snack. We call them Singspirations. And there's a devotional, and you're doing it." That was Friday. And this is Friday night after the service. I sense the Lord's calling to ministry, and he says, Sunday night you're doing this. Why did he do that? Well, he wanted to authenticate God's call and have it affirmed in my heart. And he just put me up in what would be normally a pretty simple kind of a setting, but it was very intimidating for me who had never done anything like that before. But what he was doing is he was trying to encourage and teach me what it was to eventually be, a pastor or a preacher. And I think that's very valuable. So when you look at a text like this, what I see are people who are, in a sense, professional. These two guys, especially that are mentioned, are professionals. But what are they doing? Well, it tells us there's all manner of wisdom, so they know what they're doing, but they're teaching. They're able to take that, which is special too, right? It's one thing to have somebody that can do the work. It's a whole other thing that somebody that can teach it. And all of us have probably benefited from good teachers on YouTube. I remember my dad, when I was a kid, he would go over to the public library to read books on dropping a transmission in a vehicle. That's what he would do. He'd go read a book, and he'd come home, and he'd go to work on it. Well, nowadays, you speak into your phone, and you say, show me a video of dropping a transmission in a whatever year your vehicle is, and then you can watch a video. And most of the time, the person that's doing it is good at what they do. They might be maybe not use the best grammar or so forth, but they're good at what they do. And that's very helpful. And most of us have benefited from somebody that's skilled in their craft, but then they're also able to communicate with you well enough to where you can take that information and put it to practice yourself. And if you're like me, you appreciate that very, very much, that they can do that. But that's a key component here, and it's no surprise that a teacher, by the way, Amber, would pick up on that. But that is, to me, that's one of the key elements here, that he was able to teach it. And that's something that I think all of us need to keep in our mind, because the Lord has given all believers the responsibility of making disciples. Part of making disciples is being able to communicate and to teach. And so that's very important. And I think even in our translators of the King James Bible, they said, teach all nations. They picked up on the sense of that instruction that goes into the making of disciples, which that word, that Greek word, literally means to make disciples. But anyway, yes, good catch there. And the next question goes with that. If you have the abilities and gifts, what should you do with them? Verse 34. But when Moses went in that's chapter 34. It says in verse 34, and he hath put in his heart that he may teach, both he and Aholiab the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan. So he's able to do these different things, but the Lord put in him that he could teach others, because the task that was before them was a big task, and they probably didn't want to wait a couple years in order to have the tabernacle ready. All right, so from verse 1, what do you gather had to be true of the workmen? Okay, verse 1 of chapter 36. Sorry, I should have made that clear. Then wrought Bezaleel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary according to all that the Lord had commanded. Okay, so from verse 1, what do you gather had to be true of these workmen? Yeah, Clark.
They had to be submissive to the Lord. I mean, he said it doesn't matter if you're a pastor or any kind of worker, manual labor. If it's for the Lord, it doesn't matter. In like the previous verse, chapter 35, verse 35, it says he's filled them with the skill to perform every work. So it's God that gives the abilities, like you said.
Yeah, good.
Be submissive to what God wants you to do.
Yep, good. Okay, great. Yes. Be submissive to what God wants you to do. He's given them the skill, the ability. Now, here's the task that's before them. Now go do it, right? What else do you notice here? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, great. So they're able to follow the plans, which is very important. We'll see that at the end of our study here tonight, the importance of that. So here's their work. They're able to do the work, but then there are plans. So they might say, well, I think I should, it would be better to do it this way. No, it doesn't matter if you think it would be better to do it that way. God wants it done this way, and so they're following the plans. Okay, what else? Just look at that. Look at verse number 1. Then wrought Bezaleel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord put wisdom and understanding to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary according to all that the Lord had commanded. Okay, what else do you notice? What had to be true of the workmen? So I think both of those are right on. You're exactly right. Yes. Okay, okay, good. They're multitasking, right? So all manner of work. So they had to be good at more than just one thing. Okay, good. Yeah, what else? This is probably more implicit and not explicit. So let me put it that way. Bob? Okay. Okay, yeah, they set a godly example just in their getting to it and using their gifts and talents that God had given to them. Yes. Okay. Excellent. Good. Yeah, so teamwork. So look here. You have a whole bunch of, that's what I get when I read this. It says, and every wise-hearted man. Okay, so you have a whole bunch of people who are really good at what they do. Now, what can happen if you have a whole bunch of people who are really good at what they do and you put them all in the same room or you put them to the same task? What can happen? Everybody's laughing because you could have all sorts of problems, right? Chaos. There had to be, I thought, Clark mentioned the whole submissive spirit. It seems like the two men, Bezaleel and Aholiab, were the two guys that were responsible for leading the group. Okay, so these guys had to be able to take orders. And then they had to be able to say, yeah, I have gifts and talents in these areas, but he's telling me to only work in this area. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of organization here that's going on, I believe, and directing people what they should do, maybe even some of what they shouldn't do. But I think that's a pretty important part. Jim? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's maybe not explicit here, but I'm just thinking about putting a whole bunch of people together that are very skilled and very wise. And what can happen is everybody has their own idea, and you don't get anywhere. And I think this is, this is a good lesson for us here. I like this because it goes above and beyond. What does verse 3 tell us about the offerings? They received of Moses all the offering which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the sanctuary to make it withal, and they brought yet unto him free offerings every morning. Okay, so what does verse 3 tell us about the offerings? And this will lead into the next question. What about these offerings? Okay, cheerful giver. Yeah, what else? Yeah, every morning. These are happening every single morning. They're coming, and I'm imagining them saying, I didn't give those earrings, but I don't need the earrings. I'd rather donate them to this. And so they take something else, and then they might be thinking, boy, I got that Egyptian cloth. When we were heading out of town, where they were just handing out stuff. Remember that? The Egyptians were just giving them all sorts of their wealth, and so they're now taking it and using it as a free will offering. So what does it mean? They gave freely. They weren't coerced, right, in their giving. So nobody was up there twisting their arm. They just said, hey, we have these needs. This is the place to get it, you all. So bring it in. And so, yeah, they did that. What do you think motivated them to give freely? Because it really doesn't say here. I think we can come up with an idea of what motivated them. What do you think motivated them to give freely? Okay, yeah, possibly they wanted to get the work done. So here's the task before them, maybe a task-oriented person in order to, and here are the plans. We just want to get this thing done. It's like, we're looking at a big building project here, and quite frankly, we'd love to just get it done. But in order to get it done, we need somebody to free will some big offerings, right? Yeah.
I think at the moment, God is real to Israel, and so there's definitely some emotional response to it, and good response,
Yeah.
but there's definitely an emotional response.
Good. Excellent. Yes. So there's probably some emotional response here. Remember, they have just worshipped the golden calf, and God got really mad about that, was going to consume them, said, I'm going to withhold my presence from you. Instead, the Lord delivered them and renewed the covenant with them. And so there's probably a great deal of relief and maybe a great deal of appreciation. So a response like that. Yeah, any other thoughts on this? Okay, obedience. Bill?
They just saw God work on the mountain. They saw the terrible, so many people died after the coup. But then if you keep reading, Moses has to tell them to stop.
Yeah, that's right.
So I agree with Caleb. That's an emotional response.
Yeah, they just keep going. Yeah, yeah. Terry?
They were seeing these men working every day, and so I think there was the leadership that not just the two men, but all of the men that were giving of themselves to do the work would be motivational to the ones that saw them working.
Yeah, good. That would have been motivational to see these others that are doing the work. And I think that's, as I was picturing this whole event, which I try to do, and I mentioned to you on a couple of Sundays ago, when you're reading a narrative, to imagine it like a play. And so here I'm seeing this, these guys coming together, and what they're doing is they're taking, as they receive these different offerings, they're probably melting them down. And as you melt them down, you're doing certain things. There's probably some banging that's going on. They're hearing metal hit metal. They're just seeing the work going. And so there would be motivation. Boy, I want to be a part of this. That's a cool thing. To be able to say, I was a part of, getting this place where the Lord's presence would be known. I want to be a part of that. And so they would naturally just say, I'm going to give. And that would be motivation right there. I think, and I hope this would be the case, that there would be a motivation of love for the Lord. Like, I love the Lord. I love God. I see that I am weak and frail by worshiping the golden calf, by complaining about not having water, by fearing the Egyptians overcoming us at the side of the sea and so forth. And I see my weakness, but how God has stepped in and how he has protected us. And I love him. And so this is a gift to the Lord. You'll often hear me pray before an offering about the motivation behind our giving. Lord, we give to you today because we love you. I'm speaking on behalf of our church. That motivates me. I love the Lord, so I give. I give every week. Why? Because I love the Lord, and it's not a hard thing for me. I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy giving. It, to me, is one of the most pleasurable things I can do, knowing that I'm giving to the Lord. He's given me so much, and I'm thankful for that. What was the result of their giving? Verse 5, it says, "And they spake unto Moses, saying, The people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which the Lord commanded to make." Verse 7, "For the stuff they had was sufficient for all the work to make it, and too much." So, what was the result of their giving? Abundance, yeah. That's right. Bountiful giving. There was an abundance. They had too much. What did they have to do to the people regarding their giving? In verse 6. Can you imagine that? If Gail Zern came and said, you got to tell the church to stop giving. There's too much. We have more than what we need for everything. So stop giving. She'd love to be able to do that, I'm sure. But that's what they were doing. So what was happening? They were having to restrain the people, turn them away. Can you imagine that? Folks, we don't need any more. Please take it home, for the next project or whatever. But thank you for your generosity. We have all that we need, and they kept them from giving. So now we get into the next part of it in chapter 39, verse 32. We jump ahead because, like I mentioned, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of everything. But we jump to chapter 39, verse 32. It says, thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation finished, and the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did they. Okay? How would chapter 39, verse 32, translate into our time and our present circumstances? So, how would that verse there, what's said there, this is the application aspect, how would that translate into our time and our present circumstances? Any thoughts there? It says, thus was all the work of the tabernacle, the tent of the congregation finished, and the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did they. Okay, how would that translate to today? Okay, good. Yeah, you might simply say obedience in this situation especially brought blessing. So obey and be blessed. Now, what did they obey in? Well, I think there are several things that they obeyed in. Mainly two. They gave and they worked. So if I'm going to look at that, I need to look at I give. Okay, so I'm faithfully participating in giving. Number two, I'm working. So what am I doing in the church to work? And that can be things like you're alert to there are people that have needs. So I hear about somebody's in the hospital, and you say, you know what? I love to bake. I love to cook. I like to make meals. I can minister to that. I can go do the work to be a blessing to somebody who has a need like that. You might be mechanical. You hear somebody say, in a Sunday school class, they say, you know what? For some reason, I can't, my car runs intermittently. I mean, it starts intermittently, and I have no idea. Once in a while it starts, and you say, you know what? I can take a look at it. I'm handy. I know how to do that. You say, I'm going to go and see if I can help that person. There are ways that we can help people. You might be listening and hear somebody that's going through a very hard time, and it matches to a degree something that you have experienced in your life. And so you say, you know what? One thing I really enjoy doing is I really enjoy praying. And so I'm going to go up to that person. I'm going to say, can I pray with you about that? It's doing the work of the ministry. Those are works of the ministry. People have needs. We can get to work in that. When we do the work of the ministry, we'll see here what happens is there's blessing from the Lord. Now, don't misinterpret that. I don't mean by that if you give to somebody, you're going to get a whole bunch back. That's not, that's not why we do what we do. There's blessing knowing that I was able to help them, that I could be like Jesus in coming alongside of somebody else in their time of need and fulfill that need. And what a cool thought that I could participate in that like the Lord. That's the blessing to being used of the Lord. The Lord made your antennas go up. I heard that. I'm going to do something about that. And by the way, you don't have to ask me if you can do something. Don't say, Pastor, would it be okay if I helped so-and-so out? Please don't ask me. Just go do it. If the Holy Spirit's put that on your heart, go help them. There doesn't have to be a meal train set up to help somebody. If the Lord puts it on your heart, go help them. Respond to the Lord, and you'll find that He'll bless you in doing that. So what lessons can we take from verses 42 and verse 43? Look at these. according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel made all the work. And Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord had commanded. Even so had they done it, and Moses blessed them. Okay, so, sorry, I'll put that up there. What lessons can we take from verses 42 and 43? As you look at those two verses there, what are some things that stand out? Sue? Okay, God's chosen people being obedient. Good. 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 They gave of their time. There were no restraints on them. They did the work, and the Lord blessed them. Yep, good. What else? Yeah, Dave. Good. They did the work, and they did it exactly the way the Lord wanted them to do it. And we're going to see in just a moment that it pleased the Lord. And it does do that when we do exactly what the Lord wants us to do. Yeah, Kathy. Okay, yeah, there's no complaining, right? That's good. Yeah, there's no complaining here. They did the work and obeyed the Lord. And Moses praised them. The idea there, he blessed them. Good job, everybody, for doing what you did. Yeah, I think according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel made all the work. I like this because the Lord commanded it to Moses. Moses took it. He communicated it to the people. The people decided, hey, let's do this. They get together. They give. They participate in the work. They finish the work, and they're blessed. And I'm sure they were just like, look at this accomplishment. Look at what we did. It's a pretty cool feeling to be able to accomplish a task like that, especially if it's for the Lord and you honor him with that. All right. How had Moses' spirit changed from the golden calf incident to the completion of the tabernacle in verse 43? I couldn't help but think about this. You're talking about, days earlier. I mean, many days, but, probably a couple months. From that time until this time, how had his spirit changed from the golden calf incident until now? Yeah, Terry.
Well, he was so disgusted with them when he came down from the mountain that he threw the Ten Commandments down and shattered them. And now he's blessing them.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? So from just days earlier, he's so irate and upset that he takes this symbol of God's covenant with his people, essentially, and he breaks it because they have broken it. They've broken the covenant. And he is angry. But why? Because he's been in the presence of the Lord. That's what happens. When you're in the presence of the Lord, you understand things more clearly. And we'll look at that in just a moment. But in Luke chapter 5, didn't we see that with Peter? Peter was in the presence of God, and how did that change his perspective? He looked at Jesus, and he said, essentially, I'm unworthy to be in your presence. And I think what he was experiencing was these people who have sinned against God, and he's irate with them. And now what's changed is from that spirit, I'm irate with these people, to now they've done something for the Lord. They've done it exactly like the Lord said it. And he's encouraged by it, and he praises them for it. His spirit has changed. What has changed about the people? Rebellion to obedience. And, if you're a teacher, you're blessed if you start the school year off with a student, and boy, you have the hardest time with them. But by the end, if they get it, they're obedient in class, and they listen, and they participate. Maybe they raise their hand and ask questions, good questions. You're like, wow, that was really cool. And it encourages you, yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah, so it'd be reassuring to him. I asked the Lord to forgive these people, and good, it was worth it, because they've actually done something well and done something right. And I think that really stands out here. We miss a lot of the day-to-day that happens with the people. What you read about in Scripture is what? all the negative things that the children of Israel did. But there had to be good things that they were doing at the same time too, but we just read about the negative things because they obviously stand out. I like this, and we'll wrap our study up here. Verse 34, of chapter 40. Jump ahead there. It says, "Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys." Okay, so how did verse 34 signify, or what did verse 34 signify to the people and to Moses? What does this tell us? All right, good. God's acceptance of what they did. I mean, this would be pretty cool. The Lord gives the commands and the orders, the blueprints to Moses, and now they go to work and they do it. And what happens? Well, they finish. Moses is blessed. This is great. And now the Lord descends down onto the tabernacle in a beautiful show of his acceptance of that. Okay, how does verse 35 connect to how Peter felt in Luke 5, verse 8? "Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle." Will somebody read for us Luke 5, verse 8? Remember, that's after they caught all the fish. What does that verse say? Just somebody read it good and loud for us when you find it. All right. So how does verse 35 connect to how Peter felt in Luke 5, 8? All right, good. That's right. Peter felt like he couldn't be in the presence of a holy God. And Moses and the people felt the same way. Here's the glory of the Lord. What Peter was seeing was the glory of the Lord on display. His power to be able, and sovereignty over even the fish of the sea. And that here, the Lord, who's not a fisherman by trade, was able to do something that they had never seen before. They had never caught a catch like that. How do I know that? Look at how he responded. And I didn't say this on Sunday, but I don't know this for sure, but I kind of feel like this is maybe what had happened here. I'm guessing that Peter, after following Jesus for a time, realized, I've got to go back home and I've got to work. And then the Lord sends him out into the deep water and he catches all these fish. And it was almost like the Lord said, here's 3 years worth of wages because you're going to be following me. And I don't know if that's the case, but it would be pretty overwhelming, the blessing that he would have received in that moment. How did the Lord lead the people in the wilderness? Verses 36 and 37. How might we explain that? Yeah. Okay, cloud by day, fire by night. We might say that's his what? A picture of his presence. So if he got up and left, that's what they were going to do. It's like when I was a kid, we'd go camping, and I didn't know what we were doing. But if Dad said, "Okay, tomorrow we're packing up and we're leaving," Dad gets up and he starts putting the stuff away. Guess what we're doing? We're doing it. We're leaving, because if Dad drives away, we better be in the vehicle and driving away, right? So, it's kind of that presence thing that's going on there. I think this would have been really cool to see, to be a part of, to know almost tangibly that the Lord's presence is right there. Now, we have the Holy Spirit with us. And we know that they didn't have in the Old Testament times. Why do you think the Lord made his presence known to the people in such a visual way? Why do you think he did that? Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Excellent. Yeah. So Amber mentioned it. God recognized that they needed that. She said, I think that's what they needed. They needed that. Remember, they requested the presence of the Lord be with them when the Lord said, I'll send an angel with you. And they said, no, we want you. And so, yeah, to be able to see that would help a great deal. Yeah. Was there somebody else? Good. And let's just finish up with these application questions here tonight. If God has gifted you, can you use it for him and his church? Okay, these are just questions for you to think about. Number 2, do we give freely without coercion and willingly? Do we give to the Lord freely without coercion and willingly? And then finally, how do we know the Lord is present with us today? How do you know that the Lord is present with you today? Questions for us to think about as we take Exodus with us for the future. All right, I'm going to have Caleb Merrill come. Caleb, if you want to stop back and get a microphone on your way, let me just mention a couple things. Number 4, Dana LePage, he's recovering from knee replacement surgery. He started therapy yesterday, and he said, I've been doing the exercises already,